Welcome to the Tuesday review. I'm Nathan, joined as always by Callum and James. How you going, guys?
Good.
Good. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's a good week. It's a classics week. We haven't had one in a while.
Yep.
We're talking Drive this week.
Because,
The masterpiece with the baby duck Ryan Gosling. Baby Goose.
Because
One of a few of Refn's masterpieces.
one of many.
Yeah.
But I was going to say because years and years ago when we had the old show, I remember we were talking and Callum hadn't seen Drive.
Yeah.
And that came up in the conversation. I literally walked out and and I was like, and many years later, he had not remedied that situation. Yeah. And so last week when he had watched Refn's next film, Only God Forgives, we were like, dude, what the hell?
I'm working backwards, yeah.
You have to watch Drive. You should have watched that first.
I should have started with Neon Demon, worked my way back.
Worked your way backwards, yeah. Only God for was it Too Old to Die Young?
Yeah.
Work your way back. No, but so finally you have remedied that situation, and thank God for that, because this is easily one of my favorite movies. I was obsessed with this movie. I saw it 4 times at the cinema.
It's just a really cool movie.
It's just cool.
There's just something about it. I think it's the fact that, and this is this. I guess I have this fake canon that he plays the same guy in Only God Forgives that he plays in Drive.
Yeah,
you know,
I mean the way it ends,
he changes his name. Yeah. He moves country because they essentially play the same guy.
I mean, yes and no.
Yeah, I mean, he has a lot more love in Drive than he does in Only God Forgives.
They're different characters.
He has very few lines,
which cut a lot. They cut a lot out, like in the original script.
Yeah, he had more in the actual script.
I think that's what I was talking about last week with Only God Forgives, where I was like, there was more lines and they cut it out.
It's a Ryan Gosling and Nicolas Winding Refn thing.
I think that there are some actors where, like, you know, there used to be. I've heard a saying where you should listen to an actor about a part. Like, if they're playing a part, you should listen to how they think an actor should.
I mean, it's a collaboration. It should be a collaboration between the actor and the director.
Yeah, I think that in some cases you can get away with that. Some you certainly can't. Yeah. Like, if the director has a hard and fast idea for what a scene should be, well, obviously defer to the director. But in this instance where I think that there's a really good creative chemistry between Gosling and Refn, and they just understand each other, and it kind of works. It's worked for 2 films that I've seen so far.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you got to get that balance of, like, because you always hear about the actor, you know, leaving over creative differences, and like this is often the case. It's like the director has a vision, the actor has a different vision, so it's good to when you get they're both in sync. Yeah,
and it's a good experiment in, you know, show versus tell. Like
this movie, Drive, yeah,
and same thing I guess with Only God Forgives, and it's like you don't need meaningless exposition.
Well, expression.
From
what do they say? Like, what's that phrase about expression? Communication is like some 80% nonverbal.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah,
because like Ryan Gosling, he's remarkably good at the subtle performance.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first off, spoilers.
Yeah, of course, spoilers.
The movie's 10. It's 10 years old. It's 10-year anniversary. But I guess we should talk about how his character, who's not named, is just the driver, is very deliberately a nameless drifter or cowboy. He's that. Yeah. He's that archetypal American hero. He doesn't say much. He's very mysterious. You don't know his past.
He's very weird. It's a strange thing to say, but it reminds me of a Western.
Exactly. No, exactly. That's what it is.
Because it's like that. He has that day job, but then during the night he has his jacket and he's like, you know, riding his horse, so to speak, to the mountains.
It's like a neo-noir kind of modern thriller, action thriller.
Western.
But it's also a Western. Like, it's very deliberately like a nameless guy comes into town, quote unquote, helps our lady, and then he leaves. You know, like he rides away on his horse in the end. You know, like it's very much deliberately that. I think what's interesting also about Driver as a character is that he, like Nicolas Winding Refn describes him as a superhero. Like, he's a guy who, when he puts on that jacket, the jacket is his cape.
Yeah.
He puts it on and all of a sudden...
It's like the changing of his persona.
Yeah. He's like the stuntman mechanic by day, and then he puts on the Scorpion
Master
jacket.
criminal by night.
And then he's like this cool
the getaway driver by night, yeah.
But I think because this is a Refn movie, it goes one step further. And the way I describe it, which I don't know how accurate this would be, but it's like the way I describe it is like he's more cosplaying, because the more the movie goes on, the more it eschews the typical hero, and he becomes more and more violent.
Yeah, and he's not that far removed from the gangsters that he sort of fights in the movie.
Yeah, and it becomes like, yes, he turns into the superhero, but also he's kind of pretending to be the hero. Like he literally puts on a mask.
There's a
of an actor,
line,
like an action hero.
There's a line in the film when he's talking to at the start, and then when he has to resolve the central drama.
Yeah.
When he's assisting Oscar Isaac, and he's giving the rundown about the way he operates to the criminals.
Yeah.
He says, "I don't carry a gun."
Yeah.
And I'm like, that plays into that hero mentality where
I like that quote. That whole quote.
Where he's that mentality where I'm only involved
on the job.
Yeah, I'm only involved for 5 minutes basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, I'm there to assist. But he's not like a bad guy because he wants to pretend. He thinks he's a good person.
He has a code. He has some sort of code,
like an honor code. Yeah.
I've got the quote here. He says, "If I draft you, you get your money. You tell me where we start, where we're going afterwards. I give you 5 minutes when we get there. Anything happens in that 5 minutes, and I'm yours, no matter what. Anything a minute either side, and you're on your own. I don't sit in while you're running it down. I don't carry a gun. I drive."
Yeah,
and that's like his mantra.
Yeah,
yeah.
Like,
and it's so cool.
Yeah, he's like this mystical, a cowboy, also samurai. You know, it's got that, you know, that shade of like there is some sort of code of honor.
Yeah, but I do, like you were saying, I do love the fact that he can switch at a moment's notice to being this really hard, violent guy.
Yeah, like I feel like if this movie were made by someone else, it would definitely be like, well, of course he's the hero. He's the nameless drifter who helps the woman, and then. But it's like, because it's Refn, it gets weirder and more violent.
Yeah, he's definitely, I hate to use this term because I think it's overdone, but he's definitely morally grey in the sense that as much as he wants to be a hero, he's also kind of a monster. Yeah. Because there's that scene where he infamously curb stomps and kicks the guy's head in the elevator, the Italian
which was
gangster.
Which was toned down for release.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I can
and he's
imagine.
got blood all over him, and he looks like an absolute monster.
Yeah.
And the love interest,
Irene,
Irene is watching, and she has a look of horror on her face.
I love there's such a good scene, like it's that kind of slow motion kiss.
Yeah,
with that amazing soundtrack, and it's like, and then it just flips the switch, and he's like stomping this guy's head in.
Yeah.
And you get that shot of like the head
crushed
caving
watermelon.
in.
Yeah, and you get the blood splatter.
Yeah.
And then he also has this uncomfortable look on his face, as if, like, it reminded me and this is a really strange comparison, but bear with me. It reminded me of Rorschach. He's like, don't look at my face.
No, it's definitely,
I'm like,
those
she's
vibes,
seen like the hidden part of Driver, and he can't bear to be looked at.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's such a raw scene.
Yeah.
That's what I like when I say Ryan Gosling is like in this film a king of the subtle performance. It's that look on his face that I've been exposed. Look.
Oh yeah.
That I was like, that's awesome.
Yeah. No, I like, and it's like implied that. Because, like I said, it's that drifter type character, and you know, Shannon, Bryan Cranston's character, says like, "Oh, you know, he came in 5 or 6 years ago, don't know, you know, didn't know where he came from, but he's like a mechanical whiz, so I hired him," and like, so I like there's this perhaps implied thing that it's
a
like
mysterious backstory.
He's done this before,
from town to town,
and then at the end of the movie when he drives away, it's like the adventure will go on. Again, like this will happen again.
Yeah, it would have been interesting. I think I like the ambiguous ending.
Yeah.
But it would have been cool if the ending is he rocks up in a new town at a new garage and he's like, "Hey, are you looking for work? Are you?"
Yeah. Well, I mean, like they should never make a sequel to this movie, but they definitely could. You know, like he just rocks up in another town, you know, in another state, and it's just like he gets involved in another thing. You know, like it's like a the Man with No Name trilogy kind of thing. Like he, you know, but they shouldn't do that. But you know, it's definitely the thing that's what I like about it, the history that's implied, and the future that's implied. Ryan Gosling said that that Driver is like lost in the mythology of Hollywood. Like I feel like he watches so many movies, and he just drives around. And he thinks he's really cool.
Well, that reminded me of
like I feel like it's like. it's very deliberately like this guy's a bit crazy.
Yeah.
I was reading the IMDb trivia about this film, as I'm sure we've all done, and the reason the movie got made was because Refn was kind of like sick and delirious when he was doing the interview, and Ryan Gosling, like they're talking about getting it made, and Ryan Gosling wasn't sure. But then I think he was with Ryan Gosling, like they were driving somewhere, and our Speedwagon started playing, and it was that song about some guy who drives through the streets of Hollywood or whatever.
Yeah.
And Refn starts bawling his eyes out, and he's like telling Ryan Gosling about the story, and that's kind of where the seed got planted for Drive. It's about the guy who just thinks he's really cool, whatever, driving through
Hollywood. Yeah.
Like, it's hilarious.
It's definitely it's that kind of like like I said, if this is a more traditional movie, like it's just he's a hero, obviously.
Yeah.
You take it at face value, but it's like this movie just gets weirder and weirder.
Yeah, and I love the fact, going back to what Callum was saying a second ago, at least when this movie was made, Nicolas Winding Refn knew nothing about LA, and he knew nothing about driving and nothing about cars.
So he didn't even have a license, right?
No, he failed his test
yeah.
8 times. And so basically it's like he made this movie which he has no knowledge about anything contained in the movie. And
Well,
Ryan Gosling was
I mean,
basically his point man.
He knows movies though.
Yeah, he does,
And
yeah.
that and like he I think he grew up partially in New York as a teen. Like he's from Denmark, and then he moved as a teenager to New York, and then moved back to Denmark. But like, so he definitely knows movies
knows
and
the
American
craft, of
pop
course,
culture. But in terms of like cars and
the streets of LA,
Well, that's actually one. We were talking about the collaboration between Gosling and Refn and how they gelled, and this is like a cool instance of that where Ryan Gosling like chose what car he drove in the movie, and he did it up himself.
Yeah, that's cool.
So that 73 Chevy Malibu, that with that weird grey primer color, like that's all him. Like he came up with that, that's really interesting for director and an actor to be like, okay, you do this. That's your character. That's your car. That's your gun. That's your appendage or whatever.
It's a really inspired thing. I think that you could only get away with someone as talented as Ryan Gosling doing that, though.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think it would work for every actor.
I mean, you'd have to have the passion and knowledge about cars in the first place, which I assume he does.
But I mean, Gosling's proved time and time again what an inspired actor he can be.
Yeah.
And because like it's a really stark choice for the movie, especially when you look at the jacket he wears. It kind of goes
like
together.
it's not a flashy car,
but it kind of works.
But it also kind of is, yeah.
And so it's like I can't imagine it being a different car. Like I'm sure you could put any really awesome car and they could adjust a certain thing or two here and there.
Yeah.
For it to work.
It kind of like
It's it's almost iconic.
Yeah, it fits that kind
jacket.
No, the combination of the over the top jacket. And the understated car. They kind of really go together.
Yeah, they do.
It's a cool choice. And it's a unique choice.
Yeah, and the symbolism on the jacket I like as well, with the
tail of the frog
scorpion.
and the scorpion.
Yeah. I mean that's like we were just talking about how like he's the hero, quote unquote, but he's also, there's a darker, violent side. And he says to Bernie on the phone, like, have you heard of the scorpion and the frog thing? And obviously he's the scorpion.
Yeah.
And there's also that bit where him and Benicio are watching TV, and he's like, who's that? And he's like, that's the bad guy. He's like, how do you know that's the bad guy? And the kid's like, well, she's a shark. Look at it.
Yeah.
He's like, how do you know if the shark's a bad guy? He's like, what? The kid's like, what are you talking about? Of course he's a bad. And I think that it's very obviously implied. It's like, well, he looks, he's
a shark is a shark. Is a bad. A shark is a predator.
The violence is in his nature. Like the predator is in his nature.
And so like with the scorpion jacket, Ryan Gosling's character, the driver, is the predator.
Yeah. But I also do like how there is that contrast, because the driver is very sweet with Benicio. When Standard gets beat up and Benicio is hiding in the corner, He goes to Benicio first. He doesn't even check on the father. Like he's very like there's a
paternalistic,
There's a caring side to him that I think that's what Irene is attracted to. That kind of that calm, that
paternal,
stable, but then also there's the extreme. Like this guy's kind of nuts and thinks he's really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of is, but he's not wrong. But yeah, I love that bit. Like he puts on the mask of the other the action star in the movie that and it's like he's literally cosplaying the hero.
Yeah.
Like he's pretending to be the cool main action guy, and then he just murders people. And I love how he drowns Ron Perlman's character. Like, it's so weird. This is like this droning soundtrack, and it's like this in any other movie. It's like a horror movie.
Yeah. He's got, especially, I was actually watching that, I'm thinking about it, and he has the rubber mask on as well at the time. And I'm like,
but that's what I'm saying.
If you painted that mask white, it could be Halloween.
Yeah. Like and he's like looking through the window of the pizza shop, and there's that song playing, that love song or whatever, that old fashioned love song. It's like so weird.
The violence in this movie, even when coming from the driver, is always still threatening. Like,
it's when very intense. Like,
even some of the, we'll say, more in like less extreme violence is still very threatening. Like when he's in the strip club or wherever they are, the nightclub.
Oh, I like the hammer.
With the hammer and the bullet.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's still very sort of intense.
That's cool.
Even though it doesn't seem as graphic or...
In terms of like non-graphic violence, the bit where he has Christina Hendricks' character on the bed and he's like, got his fist up. Like, I was like, oof.
I started laughing at that scene kind of because it reminded me of that Arthur, you know, that Arthur meme with the fist. I said to Nathan, I'm like, Ryan Gosling accidentally channels Arthur.
You've ruined that scene for me. That scene used to be so amazing, and now all I can think of is that Arthur.
Yeah.
I can't remember. I see a close fist, I think of Arthur.
But it's that thing of like, even the non-explicitly gory violence is shocking and threatening. And that's the point.
Yeah, but then when violence does happen, it's extremely gory.
She thinks that she's safe with him.
Who, Irene?
No, the lady from the job.
Yeah, Irene.
Oh, no, Christina Hendricks.
What was her name? Blanche?
Blanche,
yeah. She thinks she's kind of safe with him.
Yeah.
And then there's that moment when she realizes she's not.
Yeah.
And then that was also, the shotgun violence was very graphic. I said to Nathan, that was like 11 out of 10.
I really like that scene because, again, it's like not a traditional action scene at all. It's like slow motion. He's like puts up the mattress to block the guy. And then Blanche gets her head blown off.
Yeah, and that was like, oh.
Yeah, and then it's like slow motion and they're like closing in on him. And then he like grabs the shotgun and like kills the two guys.
No, he stabs a guy.
He stabs the guy with the shower pole, the shower curtain pole. And like blood splurts out.
Which is, was it plastic or
it was steel?
It's like a metal.
Steel. It would have required quite a lot of force.
Yeah,
because it has a blunt end.
Yeah, and then he like shoots the other guy, and then he's like all covered in blood. His face is all covered in blood, and he's just slow motion. Like he just kind of moves out of frame.
Yeah,
like it just off to one out of the door frame. It's so weird. I love it.
Yeah. It's very much works on the assumption that he's done it before.
Yeah.
Because where did he learn to operate? Like what part of his brain was like move the bed in front of the door frame first because they're going to come into you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like it's like he's worked the other end and he knows the ropes.
Yeah. That's the whole nameless gunslinger side aspect of it where it's like
there's an experience.
Yeah, he's not new to this. It's like when the movie starts, he's already a cold-hearted killer.
Yeah, but it's also like it's not like in another movie where it's like he's done this before, so he's good at fighting or whatever. Like there's that level, and then there's another level of like he's also super violent. Like there was no reason to stomp that guy's head in. Like he took him out.
Yeah.
Like obviously he had the skill to take the guy out, but then he just stomped his head, and then he kept stomping his head, and then he kept stomping his head. You know, like there's like an extra layer of like this guy.
He's got there's something loose going on.
Yeah, there's something dangerous.
Yeah, like
inside.
He's cool as all hell, but I wouldn't want to be alone with him. I'd be like, well, something's a bit dodgy. If he doesn't like me, I'm in trouble. Like. Because that's the weird dichotomy of the movie, though, right? Because he's meant to be the hero in a way.
Yeah.
He's meant to be cool, but he's also unhinged and violent.
Yeah.
And it's like, it kind of makes you, the audience, a little bit uncomfortable at points.
Yeah.
Because that's the point of the movie, is just like, he's the Scorpion.
Yeah.
He's like,
you're rooting for this guy,
you're rooting for the Scorpion, but
he's
also he's a Scorpion.
He's a protagonist. He's not a hero.
Yeah, exactly.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, he's like an anti-hero. Like, you know, he does the right thing. He has that code of honor that we talked about, but there's something dark inside him.
Yeah,
you know, that's dangerous.
Also going through the trivia, like Hugh Jackman was also first set to play the driver.
I wouldn't have liked
and
that.
I'm very glad we don't have that.
Yeah,
nothing against Hugh Jackman.
Yeah, that would have been.
That's a very different movie.
Yeah, like that would have been very different.
and it would have been, I feel like, probably
more
a little
mainstream.
bit more mainstream.
It depends if
Refn.
Refn stuck around and if him and Jackman, if they had the same.
But do you reckon Hugh Jackman could have had the same sort of bring the same attitude to the character? It would have been
It would have been different. Yeah.
He would have needed. He would have needed to be a bit. If he was a bit younger, maybe.
Yeah.
Because I feel like
he was still older when this movie came out.
Oh,
he still would have been a lot older.
It would have been much older. Yeah, but like, that would have been even more traditional, like cowboy looking hero guy. That would have been different. Yeah.
I think the reason Ryan Gosling works so well for Drive is because he has a good-natured face, if that makes sense. He's like the young
He's
kind
really, 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 really ridiculously good-looking.
Yeah. But like when you look at him, he doesn't look like he's an asshole.
No,
if that makes sense.
But that goes against what I was saying just before. He's got that sort of that look where you're a little bit more at ease. He's calm. What James is saying.
Yeah, the calm that Irene is drawn
calm,
to,
and then that vicious violence.
Yeah. So, but I think you need that positive looking exterior to kind of highlight the violence.
Yeah.
Because if you have a guy who looks like he's more rough and ready, then it's not going to be as shocking.
Yeah, and that also ties into the fact that if this was a quote unquote more traditional sort of straightforward action movie, which it definitely could have been with another director, it's like then it would just be like a Jason Statham type guy, who's like really good at fighting, and then it's like there's not that extra layer of like weirdness that I like. I also really like the whole cast is amazing. But
like I told Callum when he was watching the movie, I'm like, don't worry, it's surprisingly stacked. Like, you don't think it like they don't bill all these actors going in.
Well, keep in mind, like this was 10 years ago, so like Cranston was famous. Breaking Bad had started, but he's different than Cranston now. Oscar Isaac had done a few movies, but it's different than Isaac now. Carey Mulligan had done movies. It's not the same.
But it's even got Ron Perlman and like a few other sort of big hitters.
That's what I was going to say is the casting is amazing, but like whoever cast Albert Brooks as the bad guy is a freaking genius. Like what? Who? Genius.
Oh man, that scene with him and he. Are
you talking about the gangster or
Bernie?
Bernie.
Oh,
Bernie. Yeah.
The scene when he kills.
Because Albert Brooks is known for like comedy, and like he's not the guy you'd think of as like sinister mob boss. Like
he was chilling actually in the part with Shannon in the garage.
Yeah, when he kills Shannon in the garage.
Chilling.
I
love that.
And like,
I love that scene.
And
and he like grabs his arm and he just runs the straight razor down, and he's like, "It's done, let it go."
I was that's what I meant. It was chilling because he also, I could kind of sense a bit of regret.
Yeah, because I think this is stretching my memory, but I remember Albert Brooks saying in an interview, Bernie is thinking, look at what you made me do. It's that kind of thing of like, isn't this a sad kind of thing?
Yeah, but he's like, it's done now. There's no pain.
Yeah.
I was like, oh man.
It's like super violent and unsettling, but on top of that, then he goes home, washes off the straight razor, and puts it in a box of other ornate knives.
Yeah.
I'm like, so he's done this before. Like this is this guy's thing. Like he's this kind of
that's how he kills people.
Cool, calm, collected businessman, but also, it's everyone in this movie has this implied history that again, like we said at the start of the show, exactly like we said at the start of the show. It's not. There's no real exposition to it. It's more like implied or visually shown.
Yeah. Except
for a few scenes of like where Bernie talks about Shannon's past, how they broke his pelvis and all that stuff. And Standard talking about how he met Irene and stuff. Like there's that
deluxe
stuff.
Version. I'm like, did they name him Standard just to tell that cheesy joke?
Well, I don't know.
Maybe it's a strange name.
Yeah. Well, what kind of name is it?
Standard. Yeah.
But it's such a cool, like, just such a cool movie.
And this movie definitely leaned into the whole 80s aesthetic.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so, like, the whole, like, neon pink, like, credits text, so cool. And then soundtrack.
Kavinsky's Night Call. Oh.
Like, the opening credits scene, I think, is when I fell in love with this movie.
Yeah.
Because the opening car chase is incredible.
That's sort of that. I feel like that's still one of the most incredible scenes in the entire movie. Is that opening?
What's
car
interesting
chase.
is like the whole car chase takes place inside the car. Like you never see a shot like from the street or whatever of the car. Like the whole thing is like they're trying to make you feel like you're in the car, and so the whole chase scene is like in the car, and then he just like parks at the basketball game and then like coolly walks away with the crowd, and then Night Call starts playing. And you got the pink neon text, and it's like the shots of LA, which is like a character in itself. And I was just like, mind blown. This is my favorite movie ever made.
Yeah, like in terms of scenes that sort of set a movie up, like this is up there, man.
Yeah.
Like this is one of those scenes where
It
it's
sets
like
the tone.
It sets the tone.
Yeah.
It also sets the level. Like it's like this is a movie that is something else entirely.
Yeah.
Like it's not. It's like it starts with a bang.
Yeah.
It starts with a cool car chase, a heist esque scene.
Yeah.
Get away from the cops. Cool music. Cool font.
Yeah.
Like for the opening credits.
Yeah.
Like it's amazing. It starts amazing right off the bat.
Yeah. It's like, but it's also transporting you into like, this is like the cool, like 80s neon.
Kind of heightened.
Yeah.
Like reality.
Stylized. Yeah. That kind of thing. And then, Callum, you have to, because this is the first time you've seen it. So I remember the first time I watched it at the cinema, you have the opening car chase, you have the credits scene, and then it cuts to Ryan Gosling in a police uniform walking across screen. And I remember in the cinema being like, what? Did they just... Is he a...
Yeah, cop by day, bad guy by night.
Yeah.
When I saw that, I was like, cool.
Yeah.
But then it turned out he was a stunt driver.
Yeah.
Quick question. There's a scene where he's in his apartment and he's working on a contraption on his table.
Yeah, I think it's a engine part.
Okay, yeah. I was just like, do you know what that is?
It's not an IED.
Yeah, no, because for some reason in my head, I thought it was used in flipping cars.
Oh yeah, no, that I think flipping cars thing would be much bigger.
Yeah, no, only because of that. For some reason, I was
like I don't know enough about cars to know it by sight, but it's just part of the it's just rebuilding part of the engine, I think.
Because it's shown in the scene, and he's like, I'm like, is that important? Should I be paying attention to this? And it's like, no, not really.
No, it just fits. Because he's a mechanic. So.
Yeah, I'm like, well, it's just a guy doing stuff in his apartment.
Yeah, that's also another good scene where he's picking up the Impala because he wants a generic car that fits in, and that's when he introduced Shannon, Bryan Cranston's character. He's like, and driver doesn't say anything. And Shannon's like, oh, you look like you haven't slept. I can give you something. I got Benzedrine, caffeine, nicotine. Yeah. Oh, that's right. You don't smoke. Yeah, that's a good scene. Everything in this movie's good.
It's so
11 out of 10.
Callum wanted to start us off with one of his favorite scenes in the movie, talking about when Driver is helping Standard out with a heist to get Standard out of trouble. Money he owes to some local.
So classic. It's a classic mafia kind of scenario in which the person owes money, but every time he goes to pay back the money or whatever, it's increased.
They raised it,
and it gets to a point where Standard is now being threatened with violence.
Not threatened, he gets beaten up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and then they give his son a bullet.
Benicio
a bullet. And so the only way he can actually pay off his debt is by robbing a pawn shop. Now, unfortunately, Standard doesn't know that it's a setup because the money he's going to be stealing from the pawn shop is actually owned by a New York mafia boss.
I think Philly mafia.
Oh, Philly,
East Coast mob.
East Coast mob.
Yeah, and he doesn't know that. Nobody knows that. That's like the central.
Only Albert Bernie knows it. Yeah.
That's
Bernie didn't know.
No, Nino.
Yeah. Oh, Nino.
It was
Nino.
Nino.
So it's Nino's plan.
Yeah.
So that's the central. That's like the central, for lack of a better word, MacGuffin is like the money. It's like, what do we do with the money? You either keep it or you don't keep it.
Once they get it, yeah.
Yeah. It's like it's now the problem.
Yeah.
So essentially, Oscar Isaac is told to rob this pawn shop, and so he doesn't get Driver.
Yeah.
Offers to assist him.
Driver offers to assist, basically to protect Irene and Benicio.
Yeah, because he cares about them. He's like, okay, once this is done, it's done. You're out. Yeah. You don't bother these people. You don't get involved anymore.
Yeah.
So essentially, he gives the speech, the mantra speech, like we said before.
Yeah.
And they do the job. But what happens is there's another car who pulls into the parking lot to rip him off. But then they don't expect the pawn shop owner to attack them back.
Yeah.
So Blanche comes out and gets into the car, But as Oscar Isaac's standard character comes out, he gets murdered.
Yeah.
And there's a scene where Ryan Gosling's character exits the car and kind of stands like outside or goes to get outside, and he's just watching as Oscar Isaac gets shot again.
Yeah.
And it's very designed that way. That's poor articulation there.
Yeah.
It's very much intended to have the frame be almost frozen on Ryan Gosling's character.
Yeah.
As opposed to watching Oscar Isaac bleed out for a second.
Yeah.
And then it kind of kicks back into gear and he gets in the car and they speed off.
Yeah.
It's that moment it's like a breath before the exhale. Like, do you know what I mean?
Calm before the storm.
Yeah, and he's just like, once he realizes, like, oh God.
Yeah.
And then it's like, they're off.
Yeah, you can see when he's sitting in the car and you got the ticking watch and it's like, come on, get out of there, get out. And then he comes out and then he's like, okay, everything's fine. And he gets shot in the back and it's like, oh.
Yeah, and then you have that brief period of watching before craziness kicks in.
Yeah.
And they're off driving.
Chase, yeah, no, it's an awesome scene. What else should we talk about?
We could talk about the hammering in the when he tracks down.
We already talked about
that. Oh, the hammer with the
with the bullet. Yeah.
Oh yeah, my bad.
Yeah, at the strip club. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the fact that during the making of this movie, Nicolas Winding Refn insisted they all live in his house.
Oh really?
They all, like Ryan Gosling, Kerry Mulligan.
Yeah.
Everyone lived in the house. They edited the movie in the house. They did everything in the house. Cool. And they would sleep during the day and film at night.
That's
cool. Yeah, I was gonna say that's on brand.
Like, fits the mood of the movie.
Well, apparently, I'm guessing Ryan Gosling and Refn must be particularly close in real life.
Because as far as I know, they hadn't worked with each other before this.
Because you read the trivia and it'll say things like they basically chose the locations because Ryan Gosling would drive around LA with Refn and they would point things out.
Yeah, I think once Ryan Gosling got on board, it was like then they became tight and that collaboration that we talked about. Because
it's nice to see such healthy, creative collaboration. Because I loved Only God Forgives.
Yeah.
In some ways, it's a stronger film than Drive, because I think that Drive has a deeper story to it, like in the sense that there's a bit more subtext going on.
They're quite different movies, yeah.
Yeah, but in terms of technical mastery, I think things like lighting and cinematography are stronger in Only God Forgives.
Only God Forgives is more like hyper stylized with the saturated colors.
Yeah.
Drive has great cinematography, but it's a bit more restrained.
Yeah, there's not as much neon. It's kind of There's
Only God Forgives is like all about like the symbolism and the slowness, and Drive is all.
Drive's mainstream.
I wouldn't call it mainstream, but
it's the closest Nicolas gets.
It's the closest Refn film to mainstream.
Yeah,
I think after this, his movies get increasingly less mainstream. Like when you get to Neon Demon, and then Too Old to Die Young. It's just like he's like gone peak Refn. Like he's just like, and I love it. Like hooked it to my veins.
We've said before, like the scenes in Too Old to Die Young where there's just like 5 minutes of just standing.
Like it's so slow. I love it. Like it's a TV show, right? But they're like 90-minute episodes, and 90% of
half of that is just staring,
people like standing around and staring with like neon, Only God Forgives style colored lighting. You'll love it. It's great. And also it's super violent and weird. But yeah, Drive is definitely more, and that's actually a good point. Is like the trailer for Drive was like, this is an action thriller with Ryan Gosling.
You have to market it somehow,
and obviously they had to market it, get people to see it. And so obviously when you see this movie, and it's not what you expect, a lot of people, as we've discussed, just automatically are like, this movie sucks because it wasn't what was advertised. Yeah. But I was just like, this is so much better than any generic car chase. This is not a car chase movie. This movie has nothing to do with cars.
Have we heard any updates on Nicolas Winding Refn's Maniac Cop for HBO?
I don't. That was announced like, I don't know how many years ago. He was like producing a remake, and then now it's a HBO thing.
Because honestly, I could think of nothing better in my life right now than Nicolas Winding Refn's neon, gory,
dude, I love
Maniac Cop.
Ryan Gosling plays
Maniac.
Ryan
Oh
Gosling
man,
plays
Ryan
Maniac
Gosling
Cop.
plays the Maniac Cop.
That's a much different Maniac Cop than the actual original movie.
Yeah.
Because I love Maniac
The
Cop.
original movie, yeah, it's great.
And then like when he said it, I was like,
the sequel's got a bit worse, but
they're still fun though. They're like
Yeah.
dumb fun. But like if because I hate remakes, so if anyone else was involved, I would be like not interested. But Refn was involved.
he's almost the perfect fit.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, but then I'm like, but I don't really want them to remake. There's no point.
Make
Like,
an original story, yeah.
Yeah, but then like he was only producing, so I'm like, well, it might just be one of those cases where it's just like a generic horror remake, but he kind of, wants to give this another director a shot. But now they're talking about it's like a HBO Max thing or something.
The most recent I can find, most recent information I can find was from October 11th, 2019. So a couple of years, at least
it was a while ago. Yeah,
and at that stage, he was set to showrun, direct, all the episodes. Like he was showrunner and he was directing everything.
Okay, that's different.
But that's still that was a while ago. We haven't heard anything since.
Things have changed so much since the pandemic.
I'm hoping it's just on hold because of COVID.
Yeah.
I haven't just sort of cancelled.
You know what? In terms of Drive, what I would have liked to see more of is the his actual like part-time job of being a stunt driver, because it made me I actually laughed when Irene asks him what he does.
Oh yeah.
And he's like, I'm a stunt driver, and then he awkwardly goes, only part-time
though.
though.
He's like, I drive for movies, and she's like, oh, isn't that dangerous? He's like, it's only part-time.
But he says it really awkwardly. I'm like, oh man, this poor guy. He's like just not good socially.
No, but
and I like. It's like, say you're a mechanic, man. Like, what are you doing? He's like, oh yeah, well, I drive cars. He spends most of his time at a mechanic.
Like, the way I read it is, it's cars. Like, I didn't like.
It's like what he want. Like he identifies with the driving cars part. He doesn't identify with being a mechanic. If that makes sense.
No, but it's also like the part-time thing is more like it's part-time because in reality his main thing is that he's a getaway driver.
Yeah,
like that's the implied thing there, not that he was like, no, it's not really my thing. That's not what was implied.
But I would have loved to see more because I really liked seeing him in the rubber mask and driving the cars,
flipping the.
And like I'd love to see like behind the scenes stuff of like making a movie. That's kind of cool. Yeah, you know? I was like, that'd be interesting.
That would have been a different movie. That would have been interesting. Yeah, but yeah, I do like that scene as well. With Irene was like, do you want a glass of water? He's like, okay. It's like very slow and there's like not really. I assume there was a lot more dialogue and they just cut it all out.
Yeah.
And it's much better. Like it's just all it's all implied and it's all in looks and glances. And
I think it was a masterstroke of cutting all the unnecessary dialogue from the driver.
Yeah. I drive it, but yeah. I also there's that scene where they're having the party for Standard when he gets out of jail.
Yeah.
And Irene comes in the hallway and she's like, sorry, we're being so loud. And he's like, driver's like, I was going to call the cops, like sarcastically. And she's like, I wish you would. Like there's so many good lines.
Yeah.
So many, like I said, like it's like you don't have to have all this exposition or monologues or whatever.
Yeah, that's right.
You want a toothpick?
You want a toothpick? Yeah. His quotes, that's it. His quotes is every time he says something, it's either
it's kind of weird.
It can be very
it's weird, but
it's
also
referenceable.
Cool.
It's cool.
Yeah.
Or it's important to the story.
Yeah, I like the my hands are dirty, so are mine. Like it's so good.
Sort of like almost like hard boiled.
Noir. Yeah,
it's almost hard boiled noir, like detective dialogue.
Yeah,
it's like. It's like there's a cut of this movie where he narrates like a Blade Runner, like over the top.
I wouldn't like that because then that
but there's enough. You know what I mean? There's enough. Like if there's another director with this little dialogue, there will be narration. I guarantee it. It would be Ryan Gosling narrating over the top.
No, I mean if it was another like they would just put all the exposition and dialogue back in. Like that would be a different.
No, I'm saying if they had to not include all that dialogue, it would just be heavy narration over the top. There will not be that silence.
Yeah. That's definitely like I said. I mean, I can appreciate it coming from Only God Forgives, where it's a similar type of thing where Julian just doesn't say a lot in that film. So I was kind of used to it.
Yeah.
Obviously, it started with Drive.
Well, even I'm trying to think now. It's been so long since I've seen it. Valhalla Rising. He did a movie. Refn did a movie with Mads Mikkelsen, where Mads Mikkelsen is like a Viking, and I don't think the Viking ever speaks. So it's definitely like a Refn thing, or at least something that he more and more started. And when you get to Too Old to Die Young, is like people like we said, just standing around.
Well, I think there is something to say for that style because there is a lot of exposition in movies now. There's a lot of there's a lot, in most big budget blockbuster films, you have a lot of people will like explain something for the audience, and that's not bad.
Like, because I'm a self-described, what's the word? Self-professed Nolan simp. Like I love Nolan. As
we all do.
We've talked about in the show many times. Like I just love Nolan movies. And people always complain his movies, there's too much exposition, there's too much talking.
Depends on the director, depends on the movie.
Yeah, it's like, but I kind of like that about his movies. Where they're just
half the time they're very complicated already.
Yeah,
and
it's like if
there's too much exposition.
There's
too much exposition in Inception. There's too much exposition in Tenet. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, tell me how it's over-explained.
Yeah, but like I kind of like that about it. And then you get like the opposite side with Refn, who I'm also a Refn simp.
Refn's all about the vibe.
Yeah, he's all about the mood and the vibe, and it's like there's no exposition. There's no I like both extremes.
In some ways, they're complete opposites of each other, right?
Sort of, yeah.
In some ways, Refn.
But also, there's also there's not a similarity, but there's definitely
they're auteurs. Is that the word?
Exactly. I like them. They make completely different movies, but I like them both because they both have a strong vision.
Yeah, they're artists. They're not just like dudes who come in, make a movie and leave.
They're not studio directors.
They both have. I don't know the way to describe it, but like they both. When you watch their movies, you're watching it. I get the same feeling of like a pumping, like fuck yeah. Like
no, it's like you're watching something of great value.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. It's like when I go to see a Nolan movie, it's like I know what I'm watching is going to be the best possible version of that film. And it's similar with Refn, where even if Refn might not technically be as great a director as Nolan in terms of technical mastery.
Yeah.
I know that I'm watching his vision, and that there's something great about that. It's not just like
it's not a studio.
And it's very much he has an iconic style to his movies and his visions. Like of course less so in Drive, but he's like got that stark color palette, that great lighting contrasts, like you said, like the strong silent protagonist.
Like the reason I love Refn movies is like he just speaks to me. I don't know what it is, and there is definitely that level of pretentiousness that I acknowledge, but also I'm like it's also the most non-pretentious.
It's cinema though,
because he's just like he's a guy like trying to make a cool movie. Like we said, his movies are about mood. They're not about
mood and
character
vibes
and story. They're more about character than they are story, and they're more about vibes.
We're talking about Drive, so I shouldn't keep bringing up Only God Forgives.
Yeah.
But to bring it back to that film, what's interesting about Refn is that he seems to be as very much a low-tech director. He doesn't use a whole bunch of unnecessary CGI.
His movies don't really require...
Yeah, so what you see with Refn is what he can give you practically. Yeah. It's like the lighting in Only God Forgives was mostly done practically. It wasn't too much was done on a soundstage.
But
that's what makes his movies so great. Yeah. Is because it's so... it's almost homegrown. It's almost like not guerrilla filmmaking because he has money and he has people behind him.
None of his movies have been particularly big budget. I mean, and that's another reason why it's like It's
very much like he's like a 90s film director or like an 80s film director.
Way, yeah.
I think that's what we like is because he takes that old world style of filmmaking and he runs with it.
Yeah, I think it's also like I just like the like the 80s vibes, the synth music, like the Cliff Martinez score in all the movies he's done with Refn, but like Drive, it's like it just spoke to me, and like the songs in Drive, Like it's just like yes.
It contributed to the culture of like the 80s retro synthwave.
Yeah, but it's like that stuff. Obviously, I was into that stuff before I saw Drive.
But
it's like that was it's like this movie like knows me. You know, like it knows what I like.
It was made for James.
Yeah. It's like, and it also, like we said, like it has all those elements and like the violent elements, and then it also has the weird stuff that I like.
Yeah,
like I like when movies just get weird.
He's great at framing a scene.
Yeah.
So there's that scene where I think Gosling's walking down a hallway, and it's just center of like the camera's in the center of the hallway, and you just see him walking.
Yeah.
And I'm like, they could have framed that in any particular way. They could have tracked Gosling, whatever, but they chose to just have it sitting in there and just watching as he walks. And I'm like, it's stuff like that. I love framing. I'm a simple guy. I love a good frame.
It's what you said before. He's an auteur. He's not afraid to take I'll use the term risk. He's not afraid to take risks.
No. Like we said,
and that's
if
important.
anyone else made this movie, it would be a generic like action thriller.
But the fact that it's Nicolas winding Refn, it has all of his hallmarks. It's that sort of somewhat risky filmmaking. It's not a high budget movie, but directorial
Most of
risks.
his movies don't make money because they're not mainstream. People like don't like them. You know,
it's great though that the movie got a good critical reception. Yeah, like I believe it's standing around 92, 93 on Rotten Tomatoes, which is I know they're not necessarily the people you should be looking at.
Yeah, Rotten Tomatoes doesn't mean anything,
but that's still a good quality score.
Yeah, I think like we said, Drive at least has some mainstream appeal.
The cast,
to the point where it's like this is a good in point for Refn if you haven't seen Refn movies before, because as I said, they get more and more
Refn-esque
after this to the point where it's just like so
dip
in
your
your
toes
face.
in, see if you're comfortable.
But it's like like I love it, like I said, hook it to my veins, like give me more. But then you go back, like if you go backwards even, like his movie, like the Pusher trilogy is amazing. And I still think Bronson is his best movie. So
Prison movie?
Yeah, with Tom Hardy. Like I still think that's the best Refn movie.
He went full character actor for Bronson. I'm pretty sure.
Tom Hardy?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he went pretty hard into it. But yeah, so like Callum, I'd recommend like going forward, because you went Only God Forgives and then you went back to Drive. I'd say go forward, go to Neon Demon, then watch Too Old to Die Young, and then go back to Bronson and like see how you feel about that. Because I really like Bronson. I think it's his best. And like this is coming from someone who's obsessed with Drive.
Yeah.
Like
that's interesting.
The Blu-ray case for Drive was so generic and boring that I went online and found a guy who made like his own custom one, printed it out and like put it in mine because it wasn't like
I will say it's a very unassuming Blu-ray cover.
Yeah,
it's
obviously
so
we have
ugly. It's one of the ugliest Blu-rays I've ever seen. And again,
and it has like the really lame logo too.
Yeah, it has a typical action movie like font.
It ties into the.
It may as well be like a generic.
It goes to Refn didn't.
It ties into the marketing. They were just trying to get like this is a Ryan Gosling action movie kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
it
like
could be a B movie that you didn't realize.
Yeah, it's like they trick people into watching it. People are like, oh, I like car chase movies.
Although the Blu-ray, it's a very sparse Blu-ray as well. I'd like to see some sort of Criterion release or some release.
This year is the 10th anniversary. Apparently, the 4K is coming out.
I would like that. It's a very sparse Blu-ray release. It didn't even come with subtitles.
Yeah, I don't know if the 4K is any. I don't think it's a boutique label. I think it's like just a studio.
That'd be. I'd love like a. I'd love like a Cruzon or like a Criterion. That'd be nice.
Yeah.
I don't think they will, but
no,
can you imagine the subtitles on that though? It's like Driver says nothing.
No,
just
stairs.
Stairs.
Yeah, the audio descriptions. The audio descriptive
intense
subtitles.
staring intensifies.
Yeah. But we had to watch it on. We had to rewatch it on binge because like late night television watching a small house. If we don't have subtitles, I'm gonna have to watch it on streaming with headphones and stuff like that. It's not a good time, man. The Crushing Blacks.
Yeah, it's funny because I don't have Dolby.
Everything on Blu-ray.
I don't have Dolby Vision on my TV, so I was watching it. Nathan watches it with Dolby Vision.
Well, no. See, this is a technical issue.
Yeah.
My Apple TV sets Dolby Vision because my TV has Dolby Vision.
Okay.
And so the Binge does not support Dolby Vision, nor does it support 4K.
Yeah.
But the TV and the Apple TV are like, we're going to display everything you watch through Binge in Dolby Vision.
But the actual movie itself, this case, doesn't have.
No,
Dolby
so
Vision.
it alters brightness and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It doesn't look that much worse. Like, it could just be cinema mode on his
So
TV.
Nathan was telling me that the blacks don't look very good, and I had an interesting experience because I'm also watching it through Binge, and my blacks, like the dark scenes, looked awesome, but then some of the light scenes, they just didn't look so hot.
And I had the opposite experience.
It depends on the TV, I guess.
Yeah, I was like, that's interesting. It's interesting the way that works.
Yeah. No, I also, showing how obsessed with this movie, years ago...
you bought a jacket?
Oh, I wish. If I could pull off that, I would buy 2 jackets, one to display and one to wear, because if I bought one, I wouldn't want to wear it because it would get ruined.
And this goes to show you how cool Ryan Gosling is.
Yeah.
No one in the city of Melbourne could pull that jacket off.
Oh, no, there's a heap of like hipsters who could probably pull it off. But it's... I wish I could pull it off. Actually, I'm going to look up if there's a black version. I'll buy the black version. But that's a jacket I wish I could pull off. But no, I was going to say because the score, like I said, the score is amazing. The soundtrack. Quite a few years ago now, the BBC did a rescore where they got like different European. Like synth artists, electro artists, and they rescored the movie with different music.
Yeah.
So like, I was like, damn, I got that. I bootlegged that.
Was it any good?
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
What was the different soundtrack like? Did it have changed the tone of the movie? Because like I feel like that some of the thing is the coolness of the score also.
But the thing with a movie is if it's a good movie,
it would be
the score is supposed to be in sync with, like, not in sync, you know what I mean? Like it complements everything in the movie. And this score for Drive, the original score for Drive is so amazing.
Yeah.
Because it's so perfect. This rescore is more like a fun project they did because the movie obviously is known for having like a synthy soundtrack.
Yeah.
And so they got a bunch of synthy artists to like put their own songs and stuff. And so it was just like a cool curiosity kind of thing.
I'd love like if they
didn't replace the... No, it wasn't
like the trivia behind this film is so interesting. It's just such a shame there wasn't a whole bunch of special features for the Blu-ray.
Yeah, they definitely need more.
Like I was gonna say, like it'd be cool to see like a mini documentary, like behind the scenes stuff, or like even like costume stuff, like who like coming up with the jacket, maybe different designs for the jacket, like different car ideas.
The special features were all
interviews.
Yeah, the special features were all like just generic press release interviews.
Yeah,
like my character is this, and
I'd also kind of like a toy. Like a little action figure of Driver in his car.
With curb stomping action.
And like a little elevator toy.
Comes with removable jacket.
With like shocked Irene. Oh man, I would buy that.
Too bad they don't make kids' toys for like R-rated movies.
They used to.
I mean...
they had Rambo. They had a Rambo cartoon.
Now they just do it for video games.
Yeah.
The R-rated video games.
Yeah. I would like I would like Too Old to Die Young action figure.
Oh God!
With like a
weird.
Like a
smoking mother. You could have.
No, Only God Forgives playset. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man,
the little Muay Thai boxing ring. So weird.
Oh man. Oh man. I need that in my life.
Geez.
Score is so good. Songs are so good. Real human being.
Yeah.
So good. And Under Your Spell. Like such great, like such good, like perfect. Just the movie's perfect.
It's perfect.
11 out of 10.
Yeah, 10 out of 10.
I've seen it like a billion times.
I'll watch it a billion times.
And when it comes out in 4K, I'll watch it a billion times more.
Yeah, I'm excited for that 4K release.
Yeah. Especially considering my watching was substandard.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it would be good to get the 4K, like
on
watch
the projector
it properly.
as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh.
I reckon that's it.
Yeah.
Pretty much done.
Thank you for listening, everybody. We'll be back next week. You can catch the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, Shout Engine, wherever you listen. Please like and share the Facebook page, the Twitter, the Instagram.
Rate, review, and subscribe on the Apple Podcasts or whatever it is, or wherever you listen to. Rate, review, and subscribe, because it does stuff.
It helps us somehow. Thank you, everybody, and we'll be back next week. Adios, cousins.